Hi, this is Mike with Super B, and today we're going to look at the modern bicycle. They're awesome. They're lighter, they shift great, they brake great, but it takes quite a bit of maintenance to keep these things running smoothly. So we're going to look at some simple repairs and tips to keep your bike running perfectly from day to day. The first thing we're going to do is look at the tires. The tires are probably the most common problem you're going to have with your bike, and by just using a pick and your eyes, you can probably fix like 90% of the problems with your bike. It's really easy. So what I like to do, and with all tires, you're going to use the valve as a point of reference. Always use the valve as a point of reference. Then what I like to do is I carefully look at the tread, looking at the tread, and if I find a little piece of glass or wire stuck in the tire, I use this pick and I carefully dig it out. All the tires have a puncture belt, so it takes a while for the glass to get inside. So what we're going to do is get that glass out before it has a chance to cause a puncture. So carefully going through the tire, searching. We see a piece of glass, pop it out, and then that'll stop any kind of future punctures. Now that we've checked for any kind of debris in the tire, we've looked for cracks or any problems, we know the tire is okay. Next, we're going to want to check the pressure out. Now, if you've noticed your tire is losing pressure quickly, especially with a gravel bike or a road bike where you're using a tubeless system, you want to check a few things. First, you want to make sure you have sealant, nice wet sealant in there. If you haven't put sealant in the last 3 or 4 months, there's a good chance it's just dried up. One way you can kind of check, doesn't always work, but it can work, is just open the valve up a little bit, give it a touch. If you see a little bit of white liquid come out or whatever color sealant you use come out, you know you're still good. But if you don't, there's a good chance it's dry. Another thing that could be causing your air to leak out quickly is that the valve core has become loose. No big deal. You can just use a valve core tool, stick it on there and give it a quick tighten up. Okay, so you're sure your sealant is fresh, your valve core is tight, okay? So from time to time, you're gonna need to go ahead and true your wheel. It's a really common repair that I end up doing pretty much every day at my shop. So home mechanics rejoice. We have a very nice, light, sturdy wheel truing stand for you. Now wheels can get out of true for a bunch of reasons. Number one, well, you hit something hard, you crash, you hit a rock, or the spoke tension becomes a little bit uneven, maybe to a poor build quality. So this is something you're going to be doing again and again and again. So what we've got here is a new truing stand with a lot of compatibility and a lot of options. So first of all, compatibility, let's talk about it. The axle compatibility. This is compatible with anything from a 100 to a 160 width. It is compatible with QR or the different through axle sizes. So got you there. Also, it is compatible with up to 29-inch MTB wheels. So again, that takes care of mostly everything you'll need. Next, we've got this little indicator here. We can swing it down low and you can use it as a standard wheel truing stand. If you see your wheel is out of true, it's rubbing either this side or there's a big gap going this way. And a little bit closer. Okay. We got a little rub here, so I need to pull the wheel this way. I'll just grab my spoke key or spoke wrench. Add a little bit of tension to the spoke. Okay, good. And this is really cool. You can bring it up, adjust it a little bit, and you can also use it as a rotor truing stand. So since everybody is using disc brakes these days, that is really handy. So years ago, a lot of years ago in the 90s when I first was working on bikes, usually the sprockets or cassettes were 7-speed, 8-speed, and once you adjusted the bike's rear derailleur, you could kind of leave it for a year. But things have changed a lot. The new 11-speed, especially 12 speeds, the tolerances are getting very tight. Everything has to be perfectly aligned. Back in the old days, I would never think that a derailleur hanger alignment tool would be something a home mechanic should use, but these days I've changed my mind. Having a perfectly straight derailleur hanger is absolutely essential with these new 12-speed group sets. Luckily, it's not too hard to do. And if you screw up, you can always just buy a new derailleur hanger. So what you're going to want to do, first, I like to shift the derailleur over just a little bit out of the smallest sprocket to get the chain out of the way. Next, pulling up on the rear derailleur, you're going to release it from the derailleur hanger. Sometimes you can have a little bit of trouble here with the wires, but usually not a big deal. Next, put my tool away. You're going to carefully, and I do mean carefully, screw into the hanger. You might want to apply a little grease here if you're having some trouble or if it's dry. Make sure it's nice and square. It should go in pretty easily. If it's not, then just take your time. All right, and once it starts to grab, screw it in and get it nice and tight. Next, you're going to want to look at the distance between your gauge and the rim, and it should be close to the same all the way around. For example, if the gauge is further out over here, well, we need to slightly bend the hanger in this way. If the gauge is further out over here, we need to bend this way. But you want to be gentle. The hangers are usually made out of fairly soft aluminum, and this is a lot of leverage. So you're just going to give it a very soft touch and then check. Soft touch, check. And then once you're happy and it's the same distance all the way around the wheel, you can remove your derailleur hanger alignment tool. Next, you're going to reinstall your rear derailleur. Now be careful. You have it in the right position. It's a little different for each rear derailleur company. Again, I'm pushing up to make sure it stays in the right position. There we go. Now tighten it up. And then go ahead and check your shifting and it should be a lot better. After doing this adjustment, you may notice that your rear derailleur's adjustment is a little bit off and you have to re-index it, but it shouldn't be much of a problem. Okay, so almost all modern bikes use a disc brake system. All my bikes use disc brakes. I was a bit of a slow adapter at first, but now I absolutely love them. Disc brakes, they work great, but they are maintenance heavy. They do take some work. For example, this bike, you can see we're not getting a lot of movement here. We have brake rub. Brake rub is super common. You put your bike in the car, you drop it on the side, you just bump into it. Sometimes you can dislodge that brake caliper and cause some rubbing. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a few ways to get your brakes not rubbing. Okay, so one tool we can use to get us in the right direction is this brake caliper alignment tool. So it comes in two parts. What you're going to do is open it up and carefully put this on the rotor, put the silver part, and you're going to slide it in between the brake pads of the caliper. And what that's going to do is it's going to center that brake caliper to the rotor, and it'll get you pretty close. So what you then are going to use is your Allen key, and you're going to slowly and carefully tighten up that caliper again. Again, you're going to tighten one bolt a little, until they're nice and tight. Okay, then when they're tight, you're going to rotate the wheel and the rotor backwards to remove the tool. Take a look, it looks a lot better, and then there you go. You got your brake nice and centered. Okay, so you've centered your caliper, but you notice you're still getting a bit of rub. And if you look carefully, you can see, that rotor, it's just not straight. It's really easy to bend a rotor. You can bump into it, you can take it out of the car, lots of things you can do to bend the rotor. So what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to try to straighten it. It's tough, but you can get it pretty close. What you're gonna wanna use is something like this rotor truing fork to do the job. So it has two parts. We've got this end and we've got this end. I usually like to use this end for fine adjustments, and then this one is more of a coarse adjustment end. So you're gonna take a look and you're gonna watch your rotor spin in between the two brake pads, and then carefully note where it's going over to one side or the other. I just kind of take my finger, clean finger, no oil on there, and I reference where it's gonna be. Then carefully put the rotor truing fork on there and just give it a little bit of a bend. A little bit. You don't have to push very hard. This process takes time and it takes practice. So you're going to bend a little bit and then spin it again. Still a little bit over this way, okay? So then I'm going to, again, I use my fingers, I grab the spokes and just give it a little bit of a pull. Not much. And then I'm gonna check again. This process takes a long time. Be patient. And again, make sure your hands are clean because you're going to be touching your rotor. Make sure your tool is clean because it'll be touching the rotor. All right, give yourself some time and you can get it pretty straight. Sometimes your brakes can be rubbing because you've taken your wheel out, and while it's out, you accidentally squeeze your lever a few times and your pistons end up closing up too much and there's just no gap for your rotor anymore. So in that case, what you're going to want to use is a hydraulic brake piston press, something like this. That's what I use in my shop. And you're going to need to get it in there to open up those pistons again. Another thing you need to periodically check is the condition of your rotor. And when I mean condition, how thick it is. A lot of people don't realize is that a rotor needs to be replaced every once in a while. So it's kind of hard to know though, when do you need to replace it. So we have a rotor checker here that I like to use, and it quickly and easily shows how thick your rotor is and if it's time to be replaced. Okay, so this tool here, it's got some numbers on it. So each company that makes rotors has different specs on when it's time to change the rotor. So for my shop, I'm mostly concerned with Shimano and SRAM rotors. So I'm usually looking at these two numbers. The number actually means how big of a slot this is. It's 2 millimeters wide, 1.8, 1.55, and 1.5. So what you're going to want to do is identify your rotor manufacturer. In this case, it is Shimano. So with Shimano, they recommend at 1.5 millimeters, the slot size, it is time to change the rotor. So if I can slide this tool onto the rotor, and I'll check in a few places, if I can slide it on there, it is time to change the rotor. Now this is a relatively new rotor, so you can see, nope, not going. Actually, I'll take a look for reference. Okay, it barely gets on the 1.8. So yeah, we still have a lot of life left in this one. Okay, if you are still using caliper brakes, which is great, I love caliper brakes, sometimes you can get a squealing, squeaking sound. So what Super B has is this brake shoe tuner, and what this does is it realigns your brake pads to toe them in, and that means the front of the brake pad is going to hit before the rear. So what do? Your tool, you're going to look, you have a thin side and a thick side. We want the thick side to be to the back of the bike. We're going to open the brakes up just a little bit to get the tool in, making sure everything's nicely aligned. All right. Then you're going to take your 4 millimeter, just loosen those pads up just a little bit so you can move them. Then we're going to, again, look, make sure they're aligned well, give them a little squeeze to reset the angle. Then, once they look good, tighten it back down again. Okay, great. Then you can remove the tool. And then we can take a look and see, yep, nicely towed in. Okay, so we've done a lot of work on your brakes. So hopefully next time you're screaming on down the mountain, you're gonna have quiet brakes, but most important, safe, well-working brakes. A really important and easily maintainable part of your bike is the humble chain. Chains are super important. A clean chain is gonna last 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers. A clean chain is also it's gonna be a lot faster, quieter. Also, your cassette, jockey wheels or pulleys, your chain rings, they're also gonna last a lot longer. So if you have a clean chain, you're gonna have a lot faster bike. And also, it's gonna save you a bunch of money in the long run. Step one in our chain maintenance, let's make sure that this chain is still in good enough condition to ride. So we have the good basic chain checker, easy operation. You simply hook it into the link and press down with a little bit of force. If your chain checker can go all the way in, you know your chain has stretched. They don't exactly stretch, but it has worn and it is time to replace. But like this one, it does not go into the link. So we know this chain is still fine. So we can go on to step number 2, which is let's clean it again. Okay, so let's start washing that chain or cleaning that chain. We have the new updated Super B chain cleaner, and it is definitely an upgrade from the old one. This one, it's quite easy to take apart and put back together. And then right here, we have a, whoops, handy little funnel, and you can pour in your degreaser. And then we have a lever right here where we can control how much degreaser flows into the rest of the tool. Okay, open it up. Now we can add a little detergent, like so, and okay, now that we're nice and clean. Okay, after using the chain cleaner, there's still going to be a little bit of degreaser on there. So what I like to do is just take an old rag, wipe off that extra degreaser, and then at the same time, I pinch the pulleys gently, the bottom pulley, and then the top pulley. And that's just to get some of that build-up chain oil off. Okay, now that your chain's clean, it's gotten the degreaser off, it's dry, it's time to add some oil to it. So what I do is I look for a point of reference. Usually it's the quick link, and with this one it is the chain pin that we put in, so it's a different color than the other ones. One of the big mistakes people make is they put just too much oil on. You do want some oil for sure, but too much, it attracts dirt and it'll actually make your chain a lot dirtier quicker and wear out faster. So starting at your point of reference, just give it a drop, one per link, just a small drop. You don't need much, and you're going to work your way around the chain. Again, you just need a little bit. You want a little bit of oil between the links, but you really don't want any on the plates because that's going to collect the dirt. And then what I do, because I do really like a dry chain, after I've let it sit for a few minutes and I've worked it into the chain, I'll actually take my rag again and just wipe off any extra oil or excess oil that might be outside that I just don't really need. And that usually leaves you a nice clean chain that you won't need to touch again for at least another 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Okay, so one thing you really want to check from time to time with your bike are the torques of all the bolts, especially for a bike like a gravel bike. Gravel bikes, they take a lot of abuse, they're always rattling, and especially areas like the headset, they like to get a little bit loose over time. So what you're going to want to do is get a torque wrench. With modern bikes, they use very thin materials, they're super fast, they're super light. They're also a bit delicate in some ways. One way they're delicate is to over-tightening. You can easily crack a steerer tube or damage other parts. So let's look at some parts you want to look at. Let's start with the big boy here. This is a TW30. You're not going to use this as often, but there are a few places you should use this. One would be your bottom bracket. If you're experiencing bottom bracket creak, a lot of times you're going to need this in order to torque your bottom bracket correctly. And the torques, they vary quite a lot by manufacturer, but you're usually looking somewhere in the range of 35 to 50 Newton meters for the BB. Another place you may want to check are your center lock rotors. Also, you're looking at a torque of around 40 Newton meters for those. Another place you typically are going to look is your cassette lock ring. Again, you're looking around 40 Newton meters for this. Now, this tool goes all the way up to 60 Newton meters, so it will cover the full range. Now, for other parts like your stem, your seat post, you don't need something quite so hardcore. With that, you want a good standard torque wrench, and this one goes from 2 all the way up to 15, which is plenty. Now, again, the numbers vary a lot by manufacturer and part. You want to look, and for example, on this stem here, it has a maximum of 6 Newton meters. Great. A lot of times you're going to see 6, 5.2 Newton meters. It changes from company to company. Another place you're going to definitely want to look at these 2 bolts, and also the bolts here that attach the stem to the handlebar. With gravel bikes, they're forever getting loose. Another thing you're going to want to look at is your seat binder. If it's a wedge or a clamp, you're going to want to get in there and check your torque. This one also says 8 Newton meters. So again, it varies from part to part and company to company. Another thing you're going to want to probably take a look at is going to be on the back side here, your crank arm bolts. For Shimano, you're looking at about 13 Newton meters. It's 12 to 14 Newton meters. And you want to check to make sure your crankset is properly attached to the bike. These do get loose, not that often, but they do with time. Other things you can look at are the actual chainring bolts, and that is accessed from behind here. You can check out your front derailleur bolt, which holds it to the frame, and you can even check the bolt that holds your rear derailleur to the frame. These don't come loose that often, but it's something about every 3 to 6 months you might want to just take a quick look at. And I guess maybe the last thing you really want to look at, and also more common, would be these 2 bolts down here. They do also tend to get loose from time to time, especially on a gravel bike. All right, that should do ya. All right, we've taken a good look at your bike. We've adjusted your brakes. We've looked at your tires. They're beautiful. We've adjusted your hanger so your shifting is gonna be good. We've checked all the torques. Your bike is ready. You are ready. Get out there, start riding your bike. So now that you've ridden your bike and it was awesome, you had a great time, please like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, just leave them down below.